Member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, it's an honour to rise today in honour of what Minister Cho has said, and I just want the minister to know that I appreciated the words he said. I fully agree. We need to struggle for a more inclusive province when it comes to people with disabilities, Minister, and their employment needs. I fully agree. What I wanted to say in my response is highlight a few things from my riding in Ottawa Centre, Minister, and I know I promised you individually I would put some of these pioneers on your table. The Causeway is an organization in Ottawa Centre that has been working with a council of 100 different employers to help people with disabilities find meaningful employment. And they struggle, cap in hand, to find various sorts of funding to make sure they can do that. For the very reasons you mentioned, Minister, to make sure that people with disabilities could avail themselves of employment and employers can know what a great business decision it is to make sure that those workers have a decent job. I also want to talk about the case of Ben Williamson. Ben Williamson's a student at Carleton University, the very campus you visited, Minister, with the Paul Menton Centre, which I agree is award-winning. Ben had to fundraise his way into his second year of undergraduate studies, unfortunately, Speaker, because of how high tuition fees have gotten, given successive Conservative and Liberal governments. I mean, at this point, I find it extraordinary that a student of Ben's caliber has to work with somebody from the Office of Student Affairs, Speaker, with a GoFundMe campaign to raise money to go into his second year of undergraduate studies at Carleton. Ben did it. He's an extraordinary person. But for every Ben, there are thousands of other students, competent students in this province that need support for their post-secondary needs, Minister. So I look forward to working with you on that front, so you don't have to launch an intrepid GoFundMe campaign. I also want to say this, Speaker. I know that the minister is a social worker, and I know the minister has talked to me about needing to be a human rights advocate in this job, and I completely agree with that. But I also just want my friends in government to know that words are important, and a signal of intent is important. But I've been sitting in this job now for a number of months, and I like the words, and I like the intent, but I also judge action as being important. So let me talk a little bit about the labour market my friends are encouraging lately. What did we find out? Well, we found out recently, Speaker, that effective January, worker safety and insurance board premiums for employers are going to be cut by 30%. 30%. So if you think of some of the large employers in this province, Speaker, like Walmart or Loblaws or Canadian Tire, I ask through you to the minister, did those employers need a 30% cut in their workers' safety and insurance board premium, Speaker? Or did people with disabilities and their advocate organizations need that money to make sure that people with disabilities could find employment? I think it's a telling choice. I also want to say, because I know there's a number of lobbyists in the House today from our friends who are realtors, and there's a private member's bill considering allowing the incorporation of realtors. Are we in a position in this labour market where it's appropriate for high-salaried individuals to make income tax payments of 10.5%, just so I can appreciate that, 10.5%, because that will be the new corporate tax rate once this government has implemented its ambitions, while people with disabilities are struggling to make ends meet? Because, Speaker, I have to say something to you. When I knocked on doors in this election campaign and I spoke to people with, who have disabilities, they're living in poverty, and we shouldn't be shoveling out benefits to people who have too much.